Over the last month, more than a dozen vessels, both military and commercial, have been attacked in and around the Red Sea by Houthi rebels from Yemen, and that's despite repeated assurances from politicians that the war in Gaza between Hamas and Israel has been contained to that region. But you'd never know based on the news feed, because missiles and the drones are flying, ships are getting hit, crews are being held hostage, and it's a miracle that nobody has been killed yet. What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and what you see here is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. It connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden, and besides a mountain of cargo, about 8 million barrels of oil a day flows through the strait. And to the west, you've got Djibouti and Eritrea, but more importantly, to the east, you've got Yemen, where Houthi rebels have been lobbing missiles and drones as well as hijackers at any ship having anything to do with Israel in response to the outbreak of war in the Gaza Strip. And this is a live feed here from marine traffic. Every one of these little green or red arrows on the screen represents a ship traversing the strait, and as you can see, there is no shortage of traffic flowing through this narrow region. Now, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is only 20 miles wide, and it comes dangerously close to Yemen, where you can see this region in blue, which is controlled by Houthi Rebels, which is an Iranian proxy that's been waging a civil war in Yemen for the better part of the last decade. Now, over the last few years, Saudi Arabia and Iran have fought a proxy war in Yemen, along with the United Arab Emirates, where the Saudis have backed the Yemeni government and the Iranians have backed the Houthi rebels. Now, thanks to some recent diplomatic breakthroughs between the Saudis and the Iranians, the Yemeni civil war has somewhat cooled off a little bit in recent days, and that's given the Houthis plenty of free time to shoot at somebody else, in particular, any ship having anything to do with the State of Israel. This blue region here shows you all the area that is controlled by the Houthi rebels, and the Houthis are very well funded and very well armed thanks to Iranian oil money. Iran has supplied the Houthis with a massive arsenal of drones and anti-ship missiles, and while those Iranian-supplied missiles and drones might be relatively low-tech, at least by U.S. Navy standards, there's an awful lot of them, and considering the number of ships that need protection in this region, naval assets in the region have been stretched very thin trying to guarantee freedom of navigation for commercial shipping. Now, the Houthis haven't just been firing missiles and drones at ships in the region, they've also been lobbing a lot of missiles and drones at Israel, but for the sake of this video, we're going to focus only on attacks on ships over the last month, starting with the November 15th attack on the USS Hudner, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. On the 15th of November, the Houthis fired one of their kamikaze drones at the Hudner, and the Hudner was able to intercept that drone. Luckily, nobody on board was hurt. Just 4 days later, on November 19th, the car carrier Galaxy Leader was targeted by the Houthis, who boarded the ship with speedboats and helicopters, hijacked it, sailed it to Yemen, where they've been holding the crew of 25 hostage ever since. And ever since that attack, the Galaxy Leader has actually turned into a tourist attraction for the Houthis, who allow people to board her and take a tour of the ship that they captured. Just 3 days later, on November 22nd, the Thomas Hudner was back in the news, again shooting down several drones that were fired in her direction. It's unclear if the Hudner was the target of that attack or if it was Israel, only that the Hudner was in the path of those drones and that they were intercepted on the 22nd. The next attack came on November 25th when the Malta-flag bulk carrier Simi, shown here, was attacked and hit by a drone. Now, this attack took place in the Indian Ocean, approaching the Gulf of Aden, and it's believed that the Iranians were behind that one. Again, no injuries were reported on board, even though the ship was hit. The next attack occurred just 1 day later when the Liberian flag tanker Central Park was attacked by Somali pirates in the same area. Now, the crew of the Central Park was able to safely barricade themselves inside a reinforced room on the ship, and those pirates gave up the attack when the destroyer USS Mason started to approach. The Mason pursued and ultimately apprehended those pirates. While that was going on, the Houthis fired 2 anti-ship missiles at the USS Mason while they were arresting those pirates. Luckily, both missiles missed by several miles. After that, the Houthis took a few days off to better plan their next attack because we didn't hear from them until December 3rd when they attacked 3 different ships, starting with the Sophie II, a bulk carrier flagged out of Panama, who was hit by a missile, taking minor damage. Again, no injuries. The USS Carney responded to that attack, and while the Carney was responding to assist the Sophie II, the Carney was forced to shoot down a drone that was fired in her direction. It was that very same day that this vessel, the Panama flag container ship number 9, was also hit by a missile fired by the Houthis. Again, luckily no injuries on board. And again on that very same day, the Bahamas-flagged Unity Explorer was hit by a missile, taking minor damage. Again, the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Carney responded to assist the Unity Explorer, and again the Carney had to defend herself while doing that, shooting down several more drones. The Carney would shoot down 3 drones on that day. Just 6 days later, on December 9th, the French Frem-class guided missile frigate the Languedoc was attacked by the Houthis. This time 2 drones were fired at her. Luckily, she was able to defend herself and nobody on board was hurt. The drones were both shot down. 2 days after the attack on the Languedoc, the Norwegian tanker Strinda was attacked by a cruise missile. She was damaged badly and a fire broke out on board. Luckily, the Languedoc was in the area and responded to assist along with the U.S. destroyer USS Mason. The Languedoc was able to chase off the boarding parties as well as intercept yet another drone that was fired at her while she was assisting the Strinda. And again, no injuries were reported. And more recently, on December 13th, the Marshall Islands flagged tanker Ardmore Encounter was attacked both by missiles and speedboats. Luckily, both missiles fired at her missed, and onboard private security forces opened fire on the speedboats, causing them to rethink their goals in life. Again, the destroyer USS Mason responded to assist the Ardmore Encounter. While doing so, she was attacked by a drone. The Mason was able to intercept that drone. Again, no injuries. And then just today, December 14th, this ship, the Hong Kong-flagged Maersk Gibraltar, was attacked by a missile. The anti-ship missile missed by just 50 meters, exploding in the water next to the ship. Again, no injuries on board. And also happening just today on December 14th, in an ongoing crisis, contact was lost with the Malta-flagged bulk carrier Ruin shortly after she reported being boarded by unknown assailants just off the coast of Yemen. So it looks like there is another ship that has been hijacked and possibly an ongoing hostage situation here. That is along with the 25-man crew of the Galaxy Leader, which is still being held hostage in Yemen. Now, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is an absolutely vital trade route. Along with the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, it makes up a critical link between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean, thus facilitating trade between southern Europe, the Middle East, along with Asia, China, Japan. So if this conflict were to escalate and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait were to become impassable, the only other option for commercial shipping would be the much longer, more dangerous, and more expensive route all the way around the Cape of Good Hope, around the southern tip of Africa, something that to one extent or another would drive up the cost of pretty much everything. Now, so far, the US and the French have done most of the heavy lifting in defending against these attacks. The United States is currently trying to establish a multi-nation coalition to ensure freedom of navigation in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Other countries such as Israel, the UK, and the French are supposedly going to be involved in this coalition. That's something that the Iranians have issued some very oddly and vaguely worded warnings against. But it doesn't take too much imagination to figure out what the Iranians might do in response to a multinational coalition getting involved in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, because an even more important trade route, the Strait of Hormuz, that goes between Oman and Iran, more than 20 million barrels of oil per day flows through the Strait of Hormuz. That is almost a quarter of all of the oil that gets used in the world flows through this tiny passage of water. And well, if the Iranians are already using their proxies to interfere with shipping in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, then it's not such a stretch of the imagination to consider that they might also do the same thing themselves in the Strait of Hormuz. For now, the Iranians seem content to wage war via proxies instead of getting involved directly themselves. So long story short, none of the politicians are using the word war to describe what's happening in the Red Sea right now, but that's exactly what this is. More than a dozen ships have been attacked. You've got missiles and drones flying back and forth in both directions. Thank God nobody has been killed yet, but with the volume of fire involved here, it's only a matter of time before somebody gets killed. And although these relatively slow-moving missiles and drones are pretty easy targets for US destroyers and French frigates, it's still possible that one of these things gets through and one of these ships ends up hit. And if a US destroyer or a French frigate ends up getting hit and service members end up getting killed, then this thing is going to escalate out of control real fast. The politicians better get their act together before this thing blows up in their faces. And until next time, live small and dream big.